Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, or where you're calling from. My name is Ben Mahesson, and I'm calling today from London, England, and I'm joined today by the great Peter Boolkah. So this is the second session of the Entrepreneurship Month, whereby each week I'm joined by a leading entrepreneur to talk about what it's like to be an entrepreneur, to how to set up companies, and also how to grow companies. Last week, I was joined by Ella from FitBakes, where she talked about the truths and myths of entrepreneurship. This week, I'm very proud today to be joined by Peter Boolkah, who is an award-winning business coach with over 20 years experience, helping CEOs and organizations to scale and grow businesses. Peter is an expert at taking companies and helping CEOs, and it really helps with companies building higher revenue and profits for his clients and the businesses. Today, Peter is going to outline how you can identify your skills and your passions throughout your career and how you can turn them into a business, as well as provide some examples on how he started his multiple businesses and how he runs multiple businesses at the same time. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you very much, Ben. And, well, good afternoon to everybody.
Good afternoon,
Just
too.
so that you get the most value today, if you have any questions, please put them into the questions box. I'd love this to be an interactive session where you walk away with your questions answered instead of me just talking about my whole experience. I'll share stuff along the way, but content's great. Context is even better.
Absolutely. And I think, and people say today, he's not going to do too long of a presentation. I know before in some other webinars, we tend to do 40 to 50-minute presentations, but today we're going to almost kind of create a bit more of a workshop and almost like a bit of a coaching session as well. Isn't that right, Peter? People can put their questions in. Yeah. And if you have questions about your business, Pete is more than happy to answer them.
Yeah, I just want to keep it real. Definitely. Because at the end of the day, it's great. Academia is really important, but the bridge between academia and business is even more important. And being able to merge those two is critical, especially for people to become successful.
Absolutely, Peter. So could you introduce a little bit more about yourself, tell us about your history and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I'm Peter Boolkah. I am actually a business coach. I've been doing business coaching now. I'm in the 18th year. Prior to that, I've had a couple of businesses along the way. Also did a 15-year stint corporate gig with McDonald's, as well as going to university. So I can very much relate to a lot of you in the session today. And what was really interesting, my pathway to entrepreneurship and business very much unconsciously started with my grandmother, or show my age, probably about 45 years ago. So my mum came to the UK. She was a displaced migrant from the Czech Republic. Back then it was Czechoslovakia. There was a small period of window where she was able to move out to go and study. Russians came back in. She never went back. And I got the opportunity to go and spend 6 weeks every year with my grandmother in the Czech Republic. And we had a really close relationship. And I used to always, being the young grandson that I was, I think it was about the age of 6, I would shadow her at work. And I'd watch her how she would sort of be interacting with money. All she did was actually sell tickets for the metro, for the trams, and for the buses. But I was fascinated with watching the money, the transaction, counting the money, and that very much started me on my pathway. I remember going there, seeing opportunities in the Czech market where they didn't have access to Western goods. So I remember going probably about 12, 13. I was doing paper rounds, saving my money, buying nail varnish, putting it in the suitcase, bringing the nail varnish to the Czech Republic, and then selling it. And basically quadrupling my money and having a really beautiful holiday as a result of it. So it's really weird that when you're sort of with someone that talks about money, and actually in a country where you couldn't really make money, made money work, it's amazing how it rubbed off on you. And that continued for the rest of my life. I remember sort of doing that paper round when I turned 16. I started McDonald's while still studying, and I continued my work in McDonald's while I did my college. Then I went on to university. And really, when I finished university, I had this really big, grandiose idea, and I actually did business studies. surprise, surprise, I had this big grandiose idea I'd go and sort of work for this big corporate company other than McDonald's, because I'd already by that time had done so much with them. I was basically sick to my back teeth of working for sort of McDonald's. I wanted to change, went for all these interviews. And what was quite amazing was for all these sort of big sort of companies and all these big high street brands that I was going for interviews, they didn't really match up to McDonald's. They didn't necessarily have that corporate structure in place or that pathway for progression. So after doing 4 years as a degree level, graduated and carried on my career with McDonald's, which I made my way up the various ranks until eventually I left back in 2004. And look, it was a great career, and I'm sure a lot of you are either on a corporate pathway or about to embark on one. I learned so much. I got developed, trained. It was really good. I'm so grateful for so many things. I probably overstayed my time in McDonald's by about 5 years. Didn't realize it at the time. But the higher up you move in the organization, the narrower it becomes, the more constricting it becomes. And in all fairness, there's less opportunity. And I was getting to that point perhaps where I was a little bit impatient. I was never good at playing the political game. If any of you have watched Top Gun 2, you know that Maverick pisses off the admiral, or quite a few of them. I managed to do the same thing actually, which eventually, when you sort of move up, you eventually end up working for the same admiral that you pissed off probably 5 years ago, which kind of put me in a position where I had to make a decision. What do I do? Do I continue? And actually, at some point, that person would move on, which would be fine. And then my career will go. But there's no guarantee that we're never going to sort of come across each other again and work with each other. So for those of you going into corporate, first piece of advice, perhaps don't piss off the admiral. I learned that lesson.
Definitely don't burn those bridges.
Oh, do you know what? I didn't just burn them. I think I just blew them up, which was very tempting when you're younger. And I suppose you do lack a degree of maturity. And from a moral high ground stance, I won the argument.
Okay.
But unfortunately, the moral high ground doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah, I guess you're kind of being more of a disruptor, which is often they say the rule book to entrepreneurship is being a disruptor.
Yeah, that's the bit I didn't understand back then, that I was very much an innovator, a disruptor.
Yeah.
And it was uncomfortable for the organization. They don't mind you having an opinion as long as it matches their opinion. Now, that's probably changed, and that would be unfair to hit them with the same sort of stigma that was back then. But the reality was this. I then came out of corporate, and it was what next? And I did the usual interviews. I thought, okay, at 34, let me go into another corporate job, because that would have been naturally and way to go.
Yeah.
Did the interviews and everything. I actually accepted a position in the Middle East. And then, weirdly enough, I fell into coaching. Got approached by a coaching organization, went through the due diligence, wasn't going to do it at all. I actually thought, compared to McDonald's, these people were just a bunch of clowns, professional, and then really, to a degree, unstructured compared to what you could expect in a corporate environment. Yeah. But then I met final interview was I was going around the franchisees, and I met then what was to become my business partner. And sometimes we need people in our lives to help us move forward. And this guy was Ray, and he was the mentor that I'd been missing.
Yeah.
So I kind of was really intrigued by where he was going, what he wanted to achieve, and I was happy to help him achieve it. So I joined that franchise. And as you say, the rest is really history. I then went on a journey where I had done this university degree and really thought, yeah, I knew so much. And then realized that I was going back to basically the building blocks of learning and having to relearn and learn a lot more stuff that was just never ever covered at university. So my big first lesson learned was actually, when you leave university, your learning doesn't stop. Actually, as you leave uni, your learning just begins, but the learning changes. It no longer becomes curricular based. It becomes self-development based. And I wish someone had told me that years and years and years ago, because I'd have been much further forward than I am now. So I went on this whole journey about learning, self-development, or many of the things that they don't teach at school, college, or university. Really important skills that set you up for success. Learning from my clients and just beginning my true journey on becoming an entrepreneur, which at that point I had no idea what that was. I just had myself down as a business owner, struggling to survive, looking forward to replacing the income that I lost and hoping for the best. Now, in between the coach and sort of me leaving McDonald's, I actually did go into entrepreneurship and buy a restaurant. So I loved cooking and thought, yeah, okay, I needed to do something.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to go into a corporate job because that wasn't working out. So I actually bought a restaurant with one of the managers that worked for me, thinking that was going to be a really good idea because that person wanted out a long time ago. I knew them for a while. So we floated the idea, did a 50-50 partnership, and it was a disaster. Not because, so I gone.
I was saying that, yeah, how come? Because I know the restaurant industry, like my uncle actually works in it, and especially in London, it is hard. It seems very difficult. You know, restaurants opening all the time, seems very volatile. So I'm interested to hear your insight into the restaurant industry.
Well, no one ever prepared me from going from 30,000 employees reporting into you to having 14. And it was a very long time since I'd actually been operating at the coalface, an industry that I never actually knew. And I understood the rules of corporate. I understood the rules of how to operate within a corporate, but actually within SME, it's a whole new ball game. It's actually quite a scary ball game. And a lot of what I learned actually was too sophisticated for what I bought. So it was like, I was like a duck out of water. And I didn't really have a business at that time. I thought, yeah, I was a business owner. I wasn't. I actually bought somebody else's job, believe it or not. So we bought the restaurant of two restaurant owners that had been owner-operators for the last 15, 20 years. They taught us how to job and they sold us their job. So they walked off with a wad of cash. And then I ended up doing a role that I just didn't want to do and hated it.
How long were you in that role for? And how long
I managed to extract myself within a year. And it did it put massive pressure on me and then business partner. He was quite happy to do that kind of work. It really didn't float my boat. Our relationship kind of didn't end as well as it started off, put it that way. We came into it sort of as friends.
Yeah.
Probably exited as frenemies.
Oh, really? So it actually disrupted your friendship almost.
Right. It destroyed the friendship, which you'll be surprised how many businesses actually do that, both in terms of friends and in families. And I got to see that as I became a coach.
Yeah, so
thankfully,
not to work with your family and friends, or does it depend completely on the industry or the actual?
You know what? I think it's really it's the difficult one. If you build a business based on friendship, then there's a high chance you're going to lose that friendship and that business also. If you can build a business and the friendship comes, to me, that will be a much stronger foundation to maintain it. So look, there were lessons learned. But the interesting thing, and probably what I've got the most great gratitude for, was my journey in entrepreneurship. I really learned a lot from what my clients were doing. So very often I pick up clients that weren't doing well, and they very quickly taught me what not to do actually, and how not to do it. So yes, I was able to help them along the way, actually make better businesses, but I learned far more being a coach than I had done at any given time in my life.
I see. Yeah, because you're coaching all these different industries, different people. You've got a perfect rule book on different industries on what not to do.
And what it gave me, I mean, if you take it, I mean, as the years went on, I had 20 clients at any given time. So you look at 20 clients a year probably gives you the best part of 20 years industry experience because it's that intense.
course,
So
yeah.
the whole education part was so accelerated. So there wasn't scenarios that you weren't aware of, because
Yeah.
business is all about patterns. Entrepreneurship is all about patterns and gaining the experience so you can see the patterns and then react to said patterns. And you just got that on steroids by being a coach.
I see. So you're looking, so all these, so let's say all your 20 clients, are they all from different industries, different business sectors?
Yeah, they're from different industries, different sectors, different parts of the world. So I try to make it a rule that I coach clients from the EMEA region, Asia Pac region, and the Americas. And then that way I've got a good cross view of what's going on across the entire globe.
And I see. And then do you find these patterns you're talking about, are they global patterns? So let's say a country, or let's say an Asia Pacific country, their pattern is quite similar to maybe one in America?
Yeah, they are. I mean, patterns are patterns. You'll have slight nuances depending on markets, local markets, local core values and everything, traditions. But in reality, the rules of business are the rules of business.
Mm.
They don't change wherever you are in the world. People like to think they change, and they'll convince themselves that it change. I mean, my favorite one is, well, you don't understand my industry. My industry is different to anybody else's. Well, my business is like one that you've never come across before.
Mm.
Do you know, well, how many times have I heard that? It is, and it's true. They just don't understand the rules of business. That's why theirs so dysfunctional 99% of the time.
Mm. I see. So what you're saying, and kind of from your experience, was to get the foundation and knowledge of business principles, how a business runs, and that will help you for any industry and will help you a lot later in life. So if you're not a aspiring entrepreneur, definitely do your education first, or at least your research, work within the corporate, work within a SME, and then it should help you and set you up to become a better entrepreneur, would you say?
Yeah. One of the, I mean, look, a lot of entrepreneurs out there are successful through luck and hard graft.
Mm.
They can't answer how they've done it. They've just worked really hard. Very few companies actually make it through. The mortality rate in business is absolutely astronomical. But the problem you've got is most business owners, some entrepreneurs, and I'll answer a question in a bit that's come up in the question box, but most business owners, they leave school, they've got a great idea, and they just go and they work for themselves, but they never study business.
Mm.
It's alarming how many people in business have never studied business, haven't listened to a book, and actually build a business to the level of their competency and go no further forevermore.
Mm. Yeah, because you've got that ideas person. Let's take Nike, for example. Phil Knight, he was a long distance runner, wanted to make long distance running shoes, never run a company in his life. And then he set it up and realized he had no idea what he's doing when he's working with the Japanese shoemakers. And what you're kind of saying then is that it's good to have an idea and push the business forward with that, let's say, gap in the market, but you really need someone to come in with business experience to help push that and grow the company.
Yes, but more importantly, the owners themselves need to grow their sort of knowledge and understanding. They have to grow as a business owner. They need to learn. Otherwise, the business will always be limited by their level of incompetency, what they don't know. And I've seen it so often where businesses are just stuck. And they could sort of, that business could easily sort of become multi-million.
Yeah.
It's just that the business owner hasn't got the education level, knowledge level needed to take it to that level.
Do you think sometimes, because I know just from some of my friends that maybe run businesses, is that they don't want to, let's say, have someone else in to manage parts of it because they don't, not necessarily trust them, but they don't think they'll do as good of a job as they would. And it's kind of that
yes,
go element.
there's definitely an element of that. But also there's an element of the fact they don't know how to manage them. Therefore, they're intimidated by bringing in someone much better because actually what they're going to do with them. They don't have the experience. I mean, McDonald's as an example. The blessing with McDonald's was the fact that they've got one of the best management training systems in the world. That was literally, it's been referred to for absolutely 40, 50 years as being one of the best management training schools on the planet. They taught management.
And did you study management through that school as well?
Of course, yes, I did the whole Hamburger University. And
they were Hamburg University.
Yep, it's a real thing, not
That's
a myth.
amazing.
but they developed it for all levels of the operation within the business.
Okay.
And that allowed them to scale globally.
Mm.
And in the UK, the only two companies that were recognized for their management training back in the 80s and 90s were both McDonald's and Marks and Spencer's.
Mm.
They were both recognized. But you take a normal business owner, they come up with an idea. Where have they learned management? They haven't.
Mm.
They've not even read management books. Most of them manage the way they were brought up by their parents, which is a totally different story,
Mm.
and a totally different webinar, I'm sure.
And so you're sort of saying with the fake it till you make it, like these idea people, they have a great idea, they maybe open a shop on it, but they just don't know how to run a company. And that's where the business principles need to be taught.
Yeah, and that's where people need to, and this is where entrepreneurs need to learn. Now, over the last 20 years, I have to say that there's so much more material out there. YouTube's taken off. You've got audio books, you've got podcasts, you've got webinars, you've got access to so much resources that the people that truly want to learn, they can learn. And more importantly, there's so much free stuff out there to learn.
Yeah.
There is so much free stuff that you don't have to, even if you don't have money as a business and you're not making money, it's not a problem. Nothing stops you in the evening doing a bit of learning.
Yeah. And we got a question come through. Do you have any examples of podcasts and management books, webinars, which I know you do yourself as well, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, I run webinars. Well, I do run webinars. I've got one coming up in September. But podcasts and everything, it all depends on what you want to learn. I mean, you've got Steve Bartlett's podcast, which is very good when it comes to sort of interviewing entrepreneurs. You got people like Brendan Bouchard, you got Anthony Robbins talking about mindset and personal development. I think in every niche you look at, there are podcasts and thought leaders that can help develop you.
Mm.
So it's just looking for the people that you want to study and then go and find in the resources that they have. And books. I mean, there's loads of management books. One of my favorite ones happens to be the 1 Minute Manager.
The 1 Minute
Manager. Yeah, really simple book, really small, but breaks it down into such a simple language that people can start following and actioning.
I see. And so the 1 Minute Manager is about, I'm guessing, about how to be a manager.
Yeah, just how the very basics on how to manage. And I mean very much the fundamental basics.
Mm. And talk about the fundamental basics. So you said you studied your degree, you went to Hamburg University, which great name, and then you got your first business, or say, well, I think that was the first business, the restaurant that you bought.
Restaurant was my first business that I bought, yes.
And you learned from that, and you didn't like it within a year. What happened after that?
Yeah, I became a coach. So I was looking for my next corporate gig. So I thought, okay, can't be doing this. Then got approached by a company then called Action International, which then transformed to Action Coach. They were in a process of recruiting franchisees. Would I like to be one? I was bored at the time while I was looking to go into interviews. So, of course, I entertained the idea.
Being a coach, and because you're still a coach now, of course, so you were a coach as well as running businesses. How did you?
I never stopped coaching. Never stopped coaching.
Never stopped coaching, because you did it alongside running a business. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. Well, no, I started. So I was a coach. The business that I started, I joined another coach, and I had a coaching business. I started my coaching business back in 2005.
2005. And when we were speaking the other day, you said there's a couple of other companies that you've started and run. Can you maybe a little bit about that and how they are very different industries and your experiences?
Yeah. So here's the interesting thing is that as you grow and develop as a person, and as I read all these books, and I probably in year 5 as a coach, I started to invest about £100,000 a year in my education. So I'd go out there, I'd start hanging around with thought leaders, go to conferences, conventions, I'd buy the speaker's lunch and really start to work on myself.
Okay.
And as I started doing that, and I started to help other sort of companies grow, scale, and exit, my skill set grew, obviously. And then other opportunities came across. So I started to become invited as a sort of speaker. So I started to pick up clients in America, which was great. So what did I do? I set up a business in America, because for me, it'd be absolutely stupid to bring US income into the UK, because by the time you have the exchange rate difference, taxation, and everything, you're not really left with much. So I set up an entity there. So that was the second one I set up. So, I mean, over time, I learned about property, how to invest, how to grow. So I set up a property company, which is then one of the other businesses I have. And then this year, born out of pure frustration and watching, well, basically allowing myself to be ripped off for 6 years using various SEO agencies that really did feed me the bullshit line that I basically took hook, line, and sinker. That, yeah, it takes ages to see results and everything. You've got to be patient. And I was thinking £60,000 in 6 years was patience enough. I decided I was going to sort of bring it in-house and actually learn why is this as a subject so damn difficult to get right. So I went and hired the best person I could find. And I didn't realize how bloody brilliant they were until we started working together. We started to fix my website, started to get my sort of whole marketing journey from a website perspective fixed. And then I said, you know what, let's start an agency. I want to start an agency. Let's start helping other people with this. And we started that in March. And by the end of this month, we'll be up to 11 people.
Amazing. And you're saying about you basically spotted a gap or from pure frustration about how SEO was done. Was it so much was it the industry being difficult, or was it just that a lot of people in the region were just not very good at it?
Forgive me, but most people in the industry, a huge portion of them are just bullshitters. They really are. Look, you go back 15, 20 years in SEO, yes, you could get away with chucking a few keywords there, and it was fine, you'd rank. But today, the competition is so intense. I mean, everybody is on the net. If you think of it as a great book by a guy called Marcus Sheridan, They Ask You Answer. And the reality is that when you go to Google, you don't say, oh, can I have a business coach, please? They normally look, okay, I have a problem with my cash flow. Or I'm having trouble converting this sale.
Yeah.
And if you're not visible for what people search for, you're never going to be found. And if you're not on the first page of Google, you might as well not be on Google.
That's
because
true.
Unless somebody is really sufficiently bored and has a sort of appetite to go to page 2 or page 3, how many people actually do go on page 2 or page 3? So it's a game to get on the first page of Google. And it's not easy to do, but it's doable.
So you kind of talking about like your SEO and also your coaching as well. Do you coach as part of your coaching company? You coach CEOs and companies as well as helping them with their SEO now. So you're doing basically 2 things. Is that correct?
So yeah. So I've got clients where we offer both sets of services. Yeah. Because actually they're very complementary. Very complementary. Yeah. This is another reason why I wanted to set it up, because it could help my clients. And if my clients grow, it means that on the coaching side, we get a lot more sort of coaching revenue, because we can offer a lot more services that they can afford to pay for.
Definitely. And
the other thing is also, as we bring in new SEO clients, as we grow their business, as we grow their traffic and their website, and they start having more revenue come in, the end result of that's going to be, well, they're going to have growing pains and they're going to need help with it, which then lends itself to coaching work. So it's one of those industries that truly are well matched.
I agree. And the thing about coaching, I find quite interesting. I was watching one of your videos actually about explaining a coach versus consultant, and your analogy of a gym instructor, which I thought was fantastic. Is feel free to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. And this has been a big debate actually within the industry. It's been a huge debate. And a lot of people would love the romance of getting help, but don't want to do it themselves. And the reality, for a business to grow, the business owner has to grow. There's no point. And they have to do the hard yards. They have to learn how to do it. They have to be skilled at it. And I always use the example, it's not going to see a personal trainer sitting down and actually them saying to me, what weights would you like me to lift for you this week? I mean, it's just like, it's crazy. You don't go to see a personal trainer and not do the work. You do the work because actually you know there's going to be an end result as a result of the hard work. It's no different in business. But consultant will come and do it for you, which is great, fantastic. But as soon as the consultant's finished and they disappear, the businesses always revert back to their native state because no one's learned anything. So they default back to what they know, and that's just sad.
No, that's true. And that's why coaching is better, because you're helping them to upskill, to know more about what's going on, especially management. And kind of, well, we got a question on it, but let's say if I was starting a business, when would you recommend me to get coaching? Would you say from day 0 or day 10 or years down the line?
Good question. I would say have people in your network you can learn from. So look, if you can afford it, there's people out there that do group programs that are relatively inexpensive. We're in a digital age now, so the more you learn, the more you earn. You're going to pay for it one way or the other. So either you pay for it, get educated in, kind of minimize the mistakes you make, or you pay for it through the mistakes you make. Either way, there is going to be a cost in business for 99% of the people. There are going to be a few lucky so-and-sos that just intuitively get through, and that's great. And they happen to be the people that always get showcased. But for most people, the journey onto sort of starting your business is a lonely one. It's a tough one. And it's one that is far better shared with somebody that knows what they're doing.
Of course. It's funny you said that, because our entrepreneur from last week said the same thing. As everyone says, entrepreneurship is very lonely. And she said, no, it's not. You've got to find the right people to do it with you, because then you can share experience, expertise, and essentially make mistakes quicker, or don't make them at all.
Yeah, I always believe that if you're going to fail forward fast and move on.
Definitely.
But the fast bit's really important. Never fail forward slowly, because that consumes cash and pain.
I see. Is that something you advocate when you're coaching as well to many people?
Totally. Because we're all going to fail. There is no definitive golden sort of framework. The world's changing all the time. We've got to be adaptable. Everyone's going to make mistakes, but learn from it. Don't make the same one twice. Once bitten, twice stupid.
Definitely. And like, for example, with over your 20 years experience within business and coaching, for example, say if I was starting a company on making, I know, fancy bonsai trees, then I could work with you from, let's say, the get-go, and you could help me and say, well, these are the business principles. I don't know much about bonsai trees, but this is what happens. And then you can coach me through it and help me.
Yeah, absolutely. It depends on where you need it to start. I'd first question, how much of a market is there for bonsai trees? Because at the end of the day, you want to be able to make sure you can make a good living out of bonsai trees.
Of course, seeing if there is a market first.
But there's a lot of times that people will come and say they've got a really good idea.
Yeah.
And it may be a really good idea, but there's not much money in it. And that's why you see a lot of people say, yeah, well, this is my passion. Yeah, you know what? It can be something that you're passionate about, but also being broke isn't a passion. It's a burden.
There has to be a market. But for example, say if there's a market, but it's not a huge market, so you're going quite specific. Let's say the elite distance running shoes for for Nike, Phil Knight, he just wants to make really good running shoes for people who can do 4-minute miles, and not many people can do it. So the market is quite small, but within that market, there's no one else. So there was a gap there. What do you think about that concept?
Well, you just market it, and look, Nike are very good at making money out of it. When you look at their margins are insane. On a sort of £300 or £400 running shoe, it'll probably cost them £30 to make. Definitely. So you don't really need to sell high volumes. And actually, across the globe, they've got the whole sort of fly knit machine and everything. So a lot of their stuff they can build locally anyway. As long as there's money in it and sufficient money for you as a business owner to be able to do the things you want out of life, it's not a problem. I always say go for wallet share, not market share.
Definitely. That way you're not skimping by and really struggling.
Well, Apple's a great example of it. You look, everyone bitches, oh, look, the iPhone is so expensive. I've got a good friend. I mean, he's not short of a bob or two. But every time the new iPhone comes out, he moans about it. Oh, look, £1,500, it's so expensive. He
Yeah.
always buys one. And we know that Apple make insane margins on their hardware, but they also invest insane money into their R&D and acquisitions.
And their software.
And that's where profitability is so key, because it gives you the option to actually diversify and grow. If you don't have that money, you don't have those opportunities.
Hmm.
And there's a question there I want to answer.
Of course.
I think it's from Shafika, how you overcame your fears and took the first step. Well, to be honest with you, how did I do that? I was put in a position where I had no choice, because I was because I pissed off the admiral, so to speak. My time in McDonald's had come to an end. So I made the conscious decision to leave. And then I went, and because I didn't find something I wanted, I bought that restaurant and thought, yeah, it'd be a really good idea. I love cooking. Let me be Gordon Ramsay. Trust me, after 4 weeks, being Gordon Ramsay is no fun. Absolutely no fun. So it wasn't necessarily a conscious choice I made. I was thrown into it, and I had to either sink or swim. And you talk about fears. I don't think fears ever go away. I think fears are always there. You're always going to have an element of fear. I mean, if you don't have a fear, then
you're not challenging yourself.
No, you're not challenging yourself enough. No. The difference is today, I have a team of people that can help me through my fears. So I move through the fears faster, so I don't let them control me or define who I am.
So it's learning to deal with the fears and the potential rejection of leaving a corporate, let's say, semi-comfortable life at McDonald's. You kind of realize that maybe because you are inherently an entrepreneur and a, let's say, disruptor, is that you saw the shackles of the corporate world, that getting things done is very difficult. And many people do say being an entrepreneur within a big company is very hard. So that's where maybe you were more suited for smaller and more diverse companies.
Yeah, and the other thing is, no one prepared me for leaving McDonald's. So when I did finally leave, and when I did become a coach after selling the restaurant and everything, I actually was yearning for corporate. Even though I'd made a commitment to becoming a coach, I still missed that corporate life. And what I didn't realize was, actually 15 years with a company, and then you leave in that company, there's a whole identity, so confusion over your identity. 1 minute you're an exec, next minute you're not. All those things that you hung on being an exec, kind of, you've lost all of that. It's like going through a divorce. It really is. And you're going through all these weird emotions. So 3 years in, I got counseling. I started working with a psychotherapist, and I've been working with one ever since. And it was the best thing I did, because it helped me work through my bullshit that was obviously holding me back.
So that's like, of course, having a psychiatrist is almost like another form of coaching, but not for business, but in personal life.
Oh, I encourage every single client that I work with get a psychotherapist, because we all have garbage we hold on to.
Of course.
And everyone says, yeah, we're going to go to the gym. I'm going to focus on my physical strength. Sometimes they'll talk about nutrition. Why people don't want to look after the organ in between their ears, that is arguably the most important organ in the body, is beyond me.
Definitely. Well, it's like hardware versus software, isn't it? You can have the great iPhone, but if the software is the same software from iPhone 1, it's not going to be too good.
Yeah. So
I guess
probably that's answered that question.
Yeah, no, definitely. So what we're advocating as an entrepreneur and coach is for entrepreneurs to seek help, not only on the business, but also on themselves as well, because that will help them to essentially grow themselves and then grow the company and grow their expertise.
I'd even go one step further than that. And hopefully a lot of you on today's call are in your younger elements at the beginning of your sort of corporate life. My big lesson learned was that no matter who you are and no matter where you come from, we all have limiting beliefs. We all have things that potentially hold us back that we need to work through, whether it's from childhood, schoolhood, or whatever. In America, they say save up for a college fund. I would probably say the most important thing before a college fund is to go and get yourself, save up for a psychotherapist and actually work through some of the traumas you may not realize you have as you come out of school, so that when you do go into the big wide world, you're as best set up for it to be the success you want to be.
Definitely.
A lot of people that I work with, they've got highly successful business, but the trauma they carry subconsciously or unconsciously that occurred very early on in their life is frightening. And these are accomplished people.
And this is a common trend you're noticing across the world.
I've noticed it across hundreds of business owners across 18 years.
I see. And so the ultimate rule you're kind of saying, lesson learned, is to seek help, no matter who you are, how much experience you have, and even at the start of your career. And that help can be for the business and for yourself as well.
Yeah, and I would say that whatever you do, you work on yourself first. Work on yourself first, business ideas will come. But it's very hard to build a business on a broken soul.
Definitely. Okay, thank you for that. And just kind of going back more towards like the coaching element of it, because like you said, you just went from working at McDonald's straight to being a coach.
Well, apart from the restaurant, yeah.
And the restaurant, of course. And what do you say is the kind of the qualities and characteristics that are important to become a great coach? Is it listening? Is it,
Yeah, look, you've got to be a superb listener. You've got to commit ego side. I think when you work in a corporate job, as you move your way up the corporate ladder, you get to where you are in a business based on how great you are.
Yeah.
When you work with business owners as a coach, it's not about how great you are as a business owner. It's about how great you can make the business owner you're working with. That's a very different skill set. So it's about removing that sort of ego, being prepared to serve others and be humble. That's where the psychotherapist really does come in.
Yeah. I see. Thank you, Pete. And talk about another, actually we spoke about this before on one of our other calls, is about funding. So many entrepreneurs and up and coming startups, all they talk about is funding. You've got, angel investors, you've got VCs, private equities. All this funding seems to be, if you have a lot of funding, the business is going to do well. That seems to be a trend, which of course, I understand you probably don't agree with, but can you give us talk us a little bit about funding, especially around venture capitalists gone wrong? We spoke about before with
Benji. Yeah, look, and one thing you've got to understand, that when VCs come in, they run their models, and they know that probably 90% of what they invest in it's not going to make it through. It isn't. But all an angel investor needs is that one great unicorn, and they made a fortune. The problem is that either people seek funding too early, or they seek it out of desperation. So they seek it too early, where they think, yeah, if I get this money, I can scale massively, which on occasion you can. But when you don't have the business knowledge, you can have all this money, you can bring the best people on the team, but if you can't lead or manage this team, you're not going to get the results. Money doesn't buy you results, first and foremost. That's the mistake they made. The amount of times I've just seen them hire the most dysfunctional board on the planet.
Yeah.
It's like chaos. It's like it is literally like a playground where they're all bickering like children, getting paid a fortune to fundamentally ruin a company. Doesn't work. You've got to do the learning. And secondly, if you go to your business and your business is in a weak position, by the time the VC's finished, they'll be getting your money, you'll be getting your business for a fraction of what it's worth. If you are going to get funding, then what I would say is build it, especially VC or PE, build it where it's got good value. You're not going on bended knee, like with your little beggar bowl, and you're going from a position of strength. That's where you want to go. You want to borrow on from a position of strength, not a position of weakness.
Because that's whereby the terms are going to be more in the favor of the VC,
Yep.
the PEs, and they're more likely to take a larger portion of your company, and therefore it's not really your company anymore, and you have to work
Exactly. It's not
Yeah.
your company anymore. And then they don't like the way you're running it. Before you know it, you've been ousted out of your own company.
Definitely. So be wary when dealing with venture capitalists, I guess you're saying, and just, it's great to get funding, but don't get it too early. Make sure you got the product first before you get the
Make
funding.
sure you got someone that's really good, independent, that's an expert in the area, advising you would be what I would say.
Advising you. Definitely. And is this coming to kind of what you do as well through the coaching?
Well, I mean, look, we've got people that we can lean into. We've got people that we can lean into, so that, yes, we've got a network of people. And if we need funding, we look at the appropriate funding route, because it may not necessarily, it could be the fact that we get private investors in on a fixed term deal that get the next percentage back over a certain period of time. So I think there's loads of different funding mechanisms out there. Is making sure you choose the right one that works for you.
Definitely. And this is where you're, like you're saying, like, speak with friends and people within your network and other entrepreneurs, other business owners to find out what's good funding and what's bad funding. Because at the end of the day, you don't want your baby, your business to be torn apart by VCs.
It's got to be the right funding for your business at the right time. VCs can be great funding for a business at the right time.
Yeah.
But it's all about the timing.
Of course, being from a position of strength rather than a position of weakness.
Totally.
Definitely. Yeah, because what about yourself with funding? You told me before, have you dealt with any funding before? Have any of your businesses?
No, I've grown. The latest one that I've grown out of sort of the cash generated in my other business. By the end of the year, that will be generating a small profit. Next year, I'll have recovered all the money I put in.
So a lot of the money you put into this new business, the SEO one, is from your other businesses. Is that what you're saying? Let's say if I was starting a business and I've never run a business before, and I want to be cautious about getting too much funding from, let's say, a bank or hopefully not my family, then what would you recommend is a good way to generate more money? I know it depends on the industry, but would you say it's better to try become a cash rich company very early on as opposed to?
It all depends. It all depends. Most people then, when they start a business, the reality is when you start your business, you're going to be sort of chief everything officer.
Yeah.
So you're doing everything. So the beginning is just working like a total bitch, to be honest with you. 70, 80 hours a week and do what you can to generate cash. Then as you generate the cash, then you've got to decide, when I have surplus cash, how do I best utilize this cash? Do I need to hire more people? What do I need to do?
Get a nice pool table for the office.
Well, you can do that. You can do that. It's always good to have a liability in the office. But you just got to be smart with it, and you've got to say, okay, where does my investment need to be? To scale a business, you're always going to need to have a really good marketing engine. And if you look at why most companies right now are struggling, they're struggling because money shifted and their marketing isn't working. If you look at right now, current economic state across the globe, we're now in a heavy marketing phase of the economy. Yet what's one of the first things that people cut back on when things get tough? It's marketing. Why would you cut back on the thing that needs to happen to make you visible so customers know you exist? It's beyond me.
Definitely. That's tough. And well, could you say then about the economic downturn of many areas of the world? And one of the questions is asking about the key ingredient for success for internationalization, so internationally speaking, whereas at the moment it's probably quite a tough market to create a business, would you say, with all the economic downturn?
Is it a tough market? Not really. Look, with the SEO company, we're already going to open a second office next year in the US. So that's already on the cards. I don't think it's necessarily for you to be able to operate internationally, you've got to be seen internationally.
Yeah.
So it's a marketing thing. And the nice thing now, there's this whole thing around sort of globalization. You can trade globally, locally. If you've got the right marketing in place.
Yeah.
That's why marketing now is one of the most important pillars of any business.
Marketing, SEO, getting your product well known. Yeah, like you said, like the examples of Nike and Apple, you see Apple everywhere, obviously from people using them, but you see billboards everywhere. And one of the most fascinating things I find about Apple is that whenever they do an Apple advert, they've never ever stipulated the price because they don't have to. They know people buy it. They don't have to. It's the only advert you ever see without a price.
I mean, you look at Apple Vision, that's going to come in at about $4,500, probably about £3,800 in the UK. Trust me, they'll have no problem selling it.
They won't. I thought they were pushing it back, weren't they? Because of issues with technology, and they weren't.
Yeah, supply chain issues.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that'll be interesting. Making new products.
Which,
kind of going back to what we talk about with, let's say, if I was starting a company about funding, this is where from my point of view, it sounds great to get a coach or at least an advisor, maybe with yourself or anyone else, to really help me through pretty much most of the journey. I don't think there's ever a time when you don't need a coach. Is that correct?
There isn't. I suppose it's just getting the coach you can afford at the time.
Of course.
And there's many different coaches at many different price points. So do your research well.
And would you say, even if I was Bill Gates, top of my game, I know you no longer works at Microsoft, but would you still advocate for someone really high up to still have a coach? They could be most experienced.
They all do. They all have coaches. A lot of people don't necessarily go out there and advertise it, but Steve Jobs had a coach.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, Steve Jobs' coach was Bill Campbell. He was the CEO of Intuit, and they used to have their coaching sessions on a Sunday, and they'd walk through sort of Steve Jobs' orchard and walk and talk. Yeah, you look at them, Larry Ellis and Richard Branson, they've all got coaches in their lives. In fact, they've got multiple coaches because they're getting coached on different areas.
I see. And what would you say the difference between a coach and an advisor would be? Or they basically...
You can have a mixture. A coach will help you with your behavioral shifts and everything. An advisor may be just someone to bounce off of. I mean, look, the reality is with a lot of these sort of different positions now, the skill sets are starting to somewhat merge.
Yeah, they're all terms, but essentially, like, the common theme we've had throughout most of this hour is seek help, never be afraid to ask on friends, family, or anything for help. Could that be business speaking or...
Yeah, just make sure that whoever you get advice from or help from, it's helpful advice and they know what they're doing. Yeah. Because there'll be plenty of people that will tell you how it can't be done. Because they don't necessarily want you to succeed, because then you're going to outgrow them. So be very careful which counsel you seek.
Interesting. And I guess that kind of reminds me of something else we talked about, is the kind of yes, I can attitude. As I guess you want to be surrounded by people that are going to, if a problem comes to me in my new bonsai tree business, such as no one wants bonsai trees, or say a customer comes, goes, oh, can you do this sort of bonsai tree? I probably can't, but saying yes, I can is going to really help push the business forward and grow. Essentially, you can't grow without taking on aspects you've never done before.
No, and that comes back to having the right people around you. It's about having a team.
A good team that you can bounce off that are also positive.
Yeah.
Amazing. So we've got one last question. This is a bit more on the definition side. So it's saying, what is your definition of entrepreneurship? When do you believe someone could truly refer to themselves as an entrepreneur? For example, are there specific milestones, mindsets?
I don't think there is. I think as soon as you start your first business, you're an entrepreneur. Well, what kind of entrepreneur you become? Well, that is subject to how you grow. I think anyone that goes into business shows entrepreneurial spirit. It's just probably, it's a more widely used term in other countries, more so than the UK. And I suppose in the UK, it's got that connotation, doesn't it? As soon as someone says, oh, well, I'm an entrepreneur, they think their head is so stuck so far up their ass that they're not a pleasant person to be around. Whereas you go to America, they don't tend to refer to themselves as business owners. They tend to be either CEO or entrepreneur. So I think it's a localized thing.
Yeah, it's this inundation with everyone running a company. at the moment. And like you said, maybe LinkedIn's great, of course, but sometimes it can promote that hustle culture and people posting content that's not really relevant, but gets them advertising, and next minute they're sponsored by a drink or something like that.
I think the only time, don't call yourself an entrepreneur if you're an entrepreneur of a side hustle that isn't doing well. So I think as your business starts to take off and it starts to have some success, maybe that's when that term comes in. Because there's been so many people that have linked in with me, call themselves an entrepreneur, and then when I actually find out what they're doing, well, not really, it's nothing. It's just a little side hustle that isn't even generating anything, and they're doing very loosely. So that kind of destroys the term for those that are taking it seriously.
I see. And what about someone who's already working in the corporate ladder, maybe not McDonald's, but maybe like a smaller company, and if they want to become more entrepreneurial in what they do, can they still do that within a, let's say?
Of course they can. It's called a side hustle. I wrote a blog article on it, even did a video on it, I believe. Yeah, it's a side hustle. Side hustles are really good. Start a side hustle.
And so starting a side hustle is, let's say, step one of being an entrepreneur, would you say? It's
absolutely. Well, you got to start somewhere, right? So why not do it on someone else's dime, where you got the security of somebody else? What? Of course, you got security of somebody else's job. Do it in the evenings. That's how Sarah Blakely did it with Spanx.
Definitely,
well, she did.
Interesting to see
that. Jim Shark did it at the garage.
Doing it in evenings and weekends. That's exactly what our last entrepreneur last week said as well, that she worked for Vodafone and basically did a side hustle for her own purposes, and then realized there's a market, and then dropped it and went straight to the company.
I would say that's the safest option.
Yeah, that's
far better than watching TV.
That's what she said, is it's better to go from a position of strength, whereby, like you said, you're already on a wage, you're still working 9 to 5 during the day, but in the evening you can use some of your money you've got from your current job to help, let's say, spend more time on the side hustle, and then the side hustle could become a business, and then hopefully a large corporation.
And if you're young enough, do it from your parents' house where you've got no damn bills. Then you've got a lot more money that you can invest in.
That would be great. So quite a lot of people did over COVID, didn't they? They would move back home with their parents and realize, actually, I've got a lot of free time. There's a lot of problems in certain industries. Let's make a business.
Smart, absolutely smart.
So just hit the ground running. Definitely. So Pete, well, we've got about 1 or 2 more minutes left. What would you say is your top 3 recommendations for an aspiring entrepreneur?
Okay. Never stop learning.
Never stop learning.
Never stop learning. Never stop dreaming. And make sure you surround yourself with the right people.
Perfect. And of course, the good coaching that you do offer as well. You feel free to spend the next minute or so talking a little bit about your coaching if you'd like, and if you've got any offers and your links as well, I can put in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, put it in the chat box. I mean, you want to know more about me, I've got a YouTube channel, got a podcast channel, got my website, boolkah.com. You can basically type my name and find me anywhere. Just go out there, search, and just make use of all the free stuff I've got out there. I mean, I've done all the free stuff so that people such as yourselves today, you can learn, you can grow, you can develop, and you can become successful. And who's been my biggest inspiration in my career? I've had so many. When I was at McDonald's, there was a guy called Trevor. He was my mentor. He was the guy that really kind of got me started. He sponsored me, metaphorically speaking. I think as I've gone through it, there's too many.
Yeah.
I think I've had different inspirations at different times for different reasons.
That's great. That's great. Okay, perfect. Well, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much, Peter, for your fantastic insight. It's been a fantastic conversation. I've learned quite a lot, and I'm sure everyone else has learned as well. And you can already see from the Q&A box, people are saying thank you so much.
Oh, cool. Been my pleasure.
Amazing. And for all you Amber BJ members, of course, this will be recorded and it will be posted on our website and YouTube page, as well as sent out to you all in email. And please feel free to give Peter a check out on LinkedIn, on Facebook, Instagram, as well as his website, which I posted in the webinar chat box.
Look, and if you've enjoyed it and everything, the one thing I would only ask, if you could type my name into Google and just leave me a review on sort of Google My Business, that would be really helpful, because that helps with my SEO rankings. And any help with my SEO rankings is always appreciated. So thank you, and I never stop marketing.
Amazing. That's a very good point. Very good point. Perfect. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much again, Peter. It's been great.
My pleasure.
We'll speak soon. And thank you all to the audience as well. Hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. Bye now.
Bye-bye.